All right, picking up with our study from the Old Testament, the book of Exodus. Last week we left off in the section on the construction of the tabernacle, and we looked at how Moses had made the call for all of the offerings that would be given, and he restrained the people from giving. Why did he restrain the people from giving? Yes.
By restraint, you mean he didn't order them, he asked them? Is that what you mean?
No, here at this point, he restrains them from the giving. And Exodus 30, where are we? 35, 30. In Exodus 35:30, and Moses said unto the children of Israel, see, the Lord hath called, let's see, wrong section. Oh. In 36, rather, verse number 3, and they received of Moses all the offering which the children of Israel had brought for the work of the service of the sanctuary, to make it withal. And they brought yet unto him free offerings every morning. And all the wise men that brought all the work of the sanctuary came every man from his work which they made. And they spake unto Moses, saying, the people bring much more than enough from the service for the service of the work which the Lord commanded to make. And Moses gave commandment, and they caused it to be proclaimed throughout the camp, saying, let neither man nor woman make any more work for the offering of the sanctuary, for the people were restrained from bringing.
So they had enough.
They had enough.
They had enough.
Yeah.
They had enough. It's important. It's an important thing to note. The idea of a lot of times with congregations is to impress upon people to give and to push on them to give, not to allow them to give of their own free will. And here, whoever was willing, give. And they gave so much that it was more than enough for the work. Now, could we ever have more than enough? Yeah. We could, right? We could have more than we feel we could responsibly use at any given point in time. All our ability, all of our responsibilities are met. We're able to take the word out in all of the ways that we could possibly imagine. Now, I can't imagine us reaching that point.
But you don't have a jet yet.
In our,
You don't have a jet yet.
Yeah, maybe I don't need the jet, especially since I don't go anywhere.
You never see these mega donors, these mega preachers ever say, we have enough.
Right, right. And we're not saying we have enough. There's work that we'd like to do. We're talking about, we've been talking about sponsoring works abroad and ministers abroad and things of that nature. So we haven't reached that point, but it is still worthwhile to note that the point of the giving is not just amassing. It's not the idea that you're going to have a leadership with jets. And that's a contrast to what you see with these mega churches, or even smaller churches that just have leaders with aspirations that are personal aspirations, financial aspirations, and they impose that upon the congregation. The giving is meant for a work, and that we see that very clearly here. Yes.
I was going to say, it shows that the congregation should have a purpose before they request funds for that purpose, and not just keep requesting funds.
Indeed, indeed. So There are congregations that have had building funds. Is that in and of itself wrong? No. Sometimes congregations build the building and still have a building fund. Well, if the fund was to obtain a location to worship in, then once you've obtained that fund should go away. Now maybe it becomes a building maintenance fund or something like that. But we don't do this. We don't follow this idea. And so a lot of members or potential members become wary of the giving because of how the church has positioned itself over the years. Brother Tharp, you had mentioned seeing in the old newsletters a lot of pressure on the congregation to give. And giving it can be talked about. It's definitely a biblical conversation to be had, but I don't see that being the week in and week out conversation, because we see our giving is lower than what we need. And that's what I've seen sometimes at congregations. That I don't see a pattern for that. Brother Tharp.
I mean, that was early in this congregation's history, and they were trying to build a building, but it was in like every single newsletter.
Yeah.
Oh, our contribution's down 200 from last week. What are you guys doing? It seemed too much. It seemed that it went beyond the free giving.
Yeah. Now, of course, everybody, this is not to go back and litigate what decisions were made back then, but I do want us to truly have an idea of the patterns we see in the Bible. And that should guide us. It should guide us for our future. It should guide us in setting up and passing on knowledge to those that would come after us prayerfully. The congregation here will have a nice long future serving in this community. But we want to do that and secure that in a way that appears according to God's word. So, all right.
I would just say, I mean, I can see some congregations, if we didn't have the bank account from selling the old building, and we were relying just on our contribution, we'd be in trouble. So I can see where other places are very dependent on that, and so therefore they probably encourage their members. But there's a fine line between encouraging and badgering too. So we are in a blessed condition right now, so
Yes.
we should not forget that.
Absolutely. And, we can't take that for granted. At the same time, if we were in a more difficult situation, which we were in just a couple of years ago, doesn't mean that we should forget that the giving is a free will giving under any circumstance. So we've been there. It's not like we're blessed. We were blessed then with the assets, but we were in a very difficult situation, and decisions needed to be made to secure the future of the congregation. Either way, whatever situation you're in, yes, definitely inform the members of the reality of the situation, but don't pressure the members, don't guilt the members, because you don't want the members giving with a wrongful heart. That's never a good idea. So we've got to keep that in mind. Brother Young.
I may have another suggestion for another sermon. We maybe talk about church fund. Do you think we should have a definition of what being a good steward is?
That is a good one. Let's do that. We've got 2 sermons a week, so you can keep them coming. Let's see, Brother Tharp, if you could just make a mental note of that.
I'll make a written note, because my mental note erases every few hours.
But no, I think that would be a good and appropriate lesson, sermon at this time. Probably a Sunday evening one where we can have some discussion. All right, so continuing on, the tabernacle curtains and all of the boards and the veils are made, and we talked about the patterns. There are things that we can't replicate today. Why was that? Why can't we replicate those? Yes.
We have no instruction to.
Yes. We don't have patterns and the like for that. So just because we have dimensions for something, you know, if you give me the dimensions to make the curtains and give them to Sister Buttry, you're gonna have very different curtains. I'll have some gray curtains. Sister Buttry probably wouldn't choose gray. I don't know that for a fact, but that's, you know, we can understand that. Now, this wasn't left to interior decorators of that time. God did guide them. So what they did was according to the pattern. We just don't have a record of that pattern. And that is really good knowledge for us to just keep in our memory, that God did not give us everything. And here's an example where he tells us, look, I'm going to communicate with them directly on this particular bit of information. And so for people who try to act like we have everything, that's a fallacy. Brother Tharp.
Well, you know, I just covered it. I was gonna say, they weren't just like Moses told them to go do this and they had instructions, but God actually inspired the actual workers themselves.
Yes. I mean, it's so
that's not
key.
something that's gonna be written down anywhere.
Even Moses, that we don't see. Now, maybe he knew, maybe he was privy to the information. We don't know. Because God said, I'm going to work with these workers on this particular thing. So talking about even the structure, you know, we've got so much detail on the structure of the tabernacle. But those fixtures, even the fixtures, if you read that, God gave them detail on how those things were going to work. So any model that we create is just a semblance. It's not a detail. We shouldn't mistake it as, well, this is exactly as it was. It's useful. It gives you an idea of size and structure and shape and how the worship might have gone on during that time, but it's not exact. And I just think it's important for us to understand that. Brother Tharp.
I've always had the impression that it wasn't just the details of how to do it, but he showed them how to do things that they wouldn't have known how to do themselves.
Yes,
So
definitely. I'm
he
glad
gave
you
them
said
knowledge, work knowledge itself. Like, they might know not how to do this metal work, but he gave them that knowledge and what to do with it.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trade school. They, you know, they may have had some certain skills, but this had never been done before. And so God is showing them exactly how to do what they need to do. Very useful information.
Any indication that they said they have enough for the work? Any indication that they knew exactly what they needed?
Yes.
Because
Yeah, I mean, again, the indication is that they were able to say this. The people brought more than enough. So that means there had to be a tabulation. Now, there are places where you can see some of those tabulations. But again, all of the details, that's not given to us. But clearly they knew because there was a measurement. It wasn't, you know, this seems to be a lot. It's, look, it's enough, and it's more than enough. And they hadn't built it yet. But they knew. So absolutely, and good observation. All right. They make the ark, the table, the candlestick, the incense, are all made. And when we talk about things like the incense and the oils, God, even you're talking about now formulations that God is guiding, that weren't things that man did before. It wasn't just something that they knew. So we don't want to mistake that. The altar of burnt offering, laver, and the court are made. So we see as we're following through Exodus, all of the various elements that God has instructed them. And then here in verse 38, an accounting of the tabernacle materials is recorded. It makes for fairly dry reading, but just take a glance at it. Exodus 38, verse 21. This is the sum of the tabernacle, even of the tabernacle of testimony, as it was counted according to the commandment of Moses for the service of the Levites by the hand of Ithamar, son of Aaron the priest, and Bezaleel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him also was Aholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and a cunning workman, and an embroiderer in blue and in purple and in scarlet and in fine linen. All the gold was that was occupied for the work, and all the work of the holy place, even the gold of the offering, was 29 talents, and 730 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver of them that were numbered of the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,715 shekels, after the shekel of the sanctuary. And won't continue reading on, but you see this detailed accounting of the materials that are going to go into the construction of the tabernacle. A lot of gold, a lot of silver. Where did we say they got that? Yes.
Silver and copper.
How did?
But
How
they
did?
got it from Egypt
Indeed,
on the exit.
indeed. And we said they stole it.
No, God gave it to them.
God gave it to them, and He said He gave it to them
As a wage.
as what?
Payment.
As a wage.
As a wage, as a payment for the work that they did. So, were the Hebrews slaves?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Until they were paid, I guess.
It's a complicated measure here.
Well-
Now, their intent and the way they
Many
were treated.
generations died under slavery. so-
Indeed. Their intent of the Egyptians was enslaving them. They were treated as slaves. They worked as slaves, right? But what we're seeing is God had a different intention for them all along. And all of those that came before them earned wages. And when they left with those wages. Just showing the difference from the man's perspective and God's perspective. This was God's perspective all along. Can you imagine, like you said, generations would live and die. We said what, it was 20 generations that they were there. Generations would be born, live, and die as slaves. Can you imagine? And they had maybe no idea, or maybe they knew the story well enough. We don't know how well the story was passed on. We know they were still looking for a deliverer. We know the story was passed on. So maybe they had some hope during that time. All speculation, but it's healthy speculation to know that we don't know what their mindset exactly would have been. But we know God had a plan He told from the beginning, and He executed on it in the end. And we see this tabernacle being constructed not as a cathedral or something for man to say, look at what we've done, but as a gathering place for the Lord. It was meant to serve the Lord. So all of the gold and all of the treatment there, even that isn't for some extravagance. If you look at the construction of the tabernacle, it was used mostly in places where things needed to be pure, they needed to stay without rust for, how long would they be using this tabernacle?
Quite a while.
Yeah, over 40 years, until they established the temple, right?
Well, and some of those things, I believe, went into the actual temple itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I don't know if the candlesticks were remade or whatever, and those were, we see candlesticks, we think of small things, but these things are taller than a man and solid gold and weighed a bunch. So some of these things are, like you said, there's a huge value in them, but it's almost a practical use of it too.
Right. If something like that is going to be used a long time, I remember I used to have a very inexpensive watch, and it gave me a nice rash. There's some advantages to some of the more precious metals that are practical, rather than the cheaper metals. And so sometimes we just think in a certain way. We see gold, silver, things of that nature, and we think in a certain way. God's being flashy. But when I think about the tabernacle, I think anything but flashy.
Temple was.
The temple?
It was flashy.
Even there, the original temple seemed more functional. And then it started to be built out and built up. But that's another class that we're going to do. One of you started that, but all right, Brother Young.
Well, a couple of observations. You used the word inexpensive. Maybe you should use invaluable. So that would be a better term.
No, the one that gave me a rash was cheap. That's the word for it.
Well, in my last class, I noticed the summary laws mentioned twice to be kind to strangers, because the law said you were strangers in Egypt. Twice it was mentioned, be kind to strangers. So by building the tabernacle with all those materials used from Egypt, I would think that would be a constant reminder to Israel to be kind to strangers. Would you think so?
As we've mentioned here before, there's a lot of reminders that God has given Israel. And we just see them time and time again. And Israel doesn't take those reminders. And there's a lot of reminders God gives us. And we don't take heed to them. It's a shame, yes.
And Jesus never failed to use the Samaritans to be the good guys.
Indeed. Yeah, the whole idea of those that are out and without. God has never told man to treat his fellow man unjustly. Well, when God waged war, I'm talking about God waging war, there was a reason. There was always a reason. God has never instructed man to treat his fellow man unkindly.
Just the opposite.
Yes.
Travelers are always supposed to be taking care of the strangers. The only time you do see like you said, God waging war, it's on nations, it's not on individuals.
Yes. And he had pronounced judgment on those nations.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we see the priestly garments are made as part of all of this. Why? Because they're going to be attending to the service of the tabernacle. And this is all of it was part of it. And the work of the tabernacle is completed and inspected by Moses in 39 verse 32. Let's see, 39:32. Thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation finished. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so they did. That is such a key passage. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses, so did they. So Moses is telling them what God told them exactly, and they are actually carrying it out. Why is it that we can't carry out God's instructions today? Israel, with all of their failings, did carry out the instructions that God had given them. And, we're going to fight over whether or not we're going to take communion and what that means. We're going to fight over whether we're going to baptize someone and the very definition of the word being an immersion and all of the patterns that we see in the Bible. And we argue over these instructions that are clear. They are clear. Man makes us start to feel like, well, these things are a little bit unclear, and so it's open to interpretation. But go back and look at them yourselves without any sort of influence from someone else, and what conclusion would you draw? They carried out God's instruction. We can carry out God's instruction. Remember, I said when we look at the Old Testament, we are looking at enduring principles. And this is one of them. God has taken out of the world a people that he's going to have as his people. And he's going to teach them. And he's going to teach us something about ourselves in the meantime. And that's a strong lesson that we can take from them. Yes.
I wanted to make a comment. All through the talking about the tabernacle and the implements and the priest's clothes and the purity of the metal and everything, you see this concept of purity over and over and over again. They wash their hands, they do this, they purify themselves, this has to be done. And, the whole idea of holy or righteous, that you don't approach God without being clean. And even an earthly clean, God is so pure that we don't try to approach him unless we are pure too. And that's something you see when you're reading all these rules and regulations and all this.
Yeah, those that attended to the tabernacle had very detailed cleansing patterns.
Can't touch a dead person, can't do this, all these earthly things. Why does that matter to God? Because God is pure and he wants purity.
Again, and a lot of it is him teaching man about himself, the difference between himself. We're going to see this especially as we go into Leviticus, because that is the heavy function and focus of Leviticus, is the distinction of how a sinful man can approach a holy God. That's Leviticus in a nutshell. And it's a bunch of laws talking about it. Why? It's really to show the distinction between man and God. Man and God. So, all right, just a few more items on our site for Exodus. The tabernacle is set up in Exodus 40, so we get that the structure is actually being set up. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, on the first day of the first month shalt thou set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and thou shalt put therein the ark of the testimony, and cover the ark with the veil, and thou shalt bring in the table, and set in order the things that are to be set in order upon it, and thou shalt bring in the candlestick, and light the lamps thereof, and it goes on. So we see them now, they finished all of the elements of the tabernacle, now they've got the job of setting it up. And there were instructions on how to transport the tabernacle, how to set it up, how to take it down, how it was going to be transported. This was no small thing. All of the elements in it had to be transported in a certain way. So this was no small thing. But here we see the first time it's being set up. Cloud covers the tabernacle, and the glory of the Lord fills it. So we see God descending upon the tabernacle in a physical manifestation. Unfortunately, this would lead man to start to think that God is confined by the tabernacle. But that was never, of course, the intent. But we see, again, the completion of this work. The cloud of the Lord leads Israel in all of their journeys. So that was the beginning, and we see Israel being guided throughout all of their journeys throughout. All right. Yes.
Interesting is the difference between now, we don't have a physical representation of God visible to man. And yet his people, he does. And it, again, I think it plays into that idea of treating God's people as society, as children growing up into teenagers, adulthood. He's there parenting them right at this point, physically there.
Yes.
Whereas there's teenage years and then there's adult years and he's not here, you know, we're on our own.
Every step of the way. All right, we're gonna bring our class to a close next week. We will entertain the book of Leviticus. I'm gonna do it in a little different format. Hopefully it'll allow us to better balance the overview aspect along with delving into a couple places. So basically, we're going to deal with it more in an outline format, and I'm going to pick a couple of places to just to focus on a little bit more. We obviously won't be able to focus on the whole thing, but I did want to respond to some of the feedback of just liking when we can go into some things deeper. Along with that, I'll ask that if there's something else that you'd like to delve into, obviously won't be able to go into all of it, but if there is something that you'd like to delve into, let me know. And instead of just leaving that book, we can maybe take a moment to delve into one or two more topics as time permits. So that'll be the plan. We'll see how it goes. As always, give me feedback. We're adjusting on this. Thank you for your attention and your participation.